So I bought a Bauer and I wore it out. It was a decent saw for for the money. You can't go wrong, and it changed a lot of things in my little metal shop here, as far as cleanliness, the amount of noise I was producing when I was cutting with my grinders and chop saws, all that stuff. So at any rate, I don't think many people, or I don't know, most people that I know that have these things end up sticking them in some type of a stand to use them upright. It seems they get more use that way than being in a box to pull out and chop a pipe every once in a while. Now, this is my first stand, and this has been modified for the Hercules saw. It originally fit a Bauer, and this is the bottom of an old compressor, a little pancake compressor, and I can't remember if that's pipe I cut or if that's something that I bent, but that's what I used to saddle the handhold, and here is the other hand grip up here that it would sit in. So I'd drop this thing in here and here, and I had to change both of these when I upgraded to the Hercules Portaband. This was a great stand because it had rubber mounted feet, for anti-vibration or whatever. Basically, I built this and then built everything in around it, because it's a little daunting trying to figure out how you're going to grab everything to build a mount for it. My first table I had to toss. This is my second one, and I believe that's the original. I can't remember if I reused the top or not, but it's heavy duty, and it kind of straddled this guy here. If you notice this little bracket here, that little bracket would slide down over the top of this, so it kind of locked everything together, and it worked pretty well. I bought this because I wanted more consistent, clean angle cuts, and in this position it will produce those, but there are a few problems. Now, the first thing was getting this thing all in here straight. I leveled my table both ways, north, south, east, and west. That way I checked my level on this, and then I was able to start hanging my saw to make sure that my saw was square with the bottom piece, and adjusted to where everything came out. I took a lot of time, maybe 45 minutes to an hour, to get it just right. There's also adjustments back here in this plate. You can loosen these so you can slide it this way, and you can tilt it this way, just enough to get your blade square with your cutting surface. One thing I like about this is this here. I've noticed after I've used it over time, it's starting to get a little bit more spongy, so I'm going to have to take a look at it and see exactly what I might need to readjust. These come with a bunch of different brackets for DeWalt, Makita, Bauer, Hercules, you name it. So any type of saw that you have, you can buy one of these, I believe, and you can use, and that's cord and cordless as well. Here's my concern. When I went to cut a 45-degree angle cut, if I'm not cutting just the tip, and I want to cut something midsection of the pipe, if you'll see, it hits right there. So I have to use a standoff, which I normally use like a 1-inch piece of square tubing or something like that to stand it off a little bit, to get it away from the saw. I put one of these tabletop clamps in here. This works pretty well to holding things down. Now there is another hole that you can put this in, and it's just this particular one has everything from 0 to 60, and if you move it down a hole, you only have 45 and 0. You can make some more marks if you want to, but it does take away from your cutting width to use this hole, and I haven't really found a practical use for it yet. This is a nice feature if you are tightening this thing up here and it gets too close to this. You can lift up on it and twist it back, so no worries there. When I do a lot of cutting, I leave this guard on, but I take this one off because I want all that dust to fall out of there. If not, that can create problems for you. One of the fail points on all these saws, the Bowers and the Hercules, are going to be these bearings right here that you're constantly putting pressure against. As far as cutting good, clean angles, this thing does it with the one little fail that I mentioned. But besides that, you know, I like it. The one thing I will mention is that if you can afford it, buy 2 saws, build one upright, and leave one in here because the conversion is a pain in the butt. And that's what I'm going to speak on next. I'm not doing an assembly line of stuff where you're cutting a bunch of angles and then you're going back up, or you need to do some hand cuts where you need this thing upright and you have to go back and forth in between. It can be a little bit of a pain. In lieu of trying to save some time, I designed my own table because I did not like the one that they sent for the upright. To go into upright, push down on the saw a little bit, this releases. And when the chain's off, then this will lift all the way up. At that point, you sit it on the 4 back rubber feet, not too close to the edge of the table because the rubber feet here will catch, just like this. And it puts a bind on everything. So you need to make sure that you have it pulled far enough away to where those clear. And that puts your saw right on the edge of the table. And unfortunately, the saw is extremely top heavy with all this weight hanging down here. I'm still getting into those feet. There we go. So that's pretty much what it looks like when it's on the table. Let me stand back a little bit. They supply you a really nice small aluminum, I don't know exactly where it's at, but it's a little bitty tabletop. And you have to take out these 2 Allens to remove this piece here, and then it screws down. There's no other support except for those 2 screws. If you do strip those out, though, the piece that they screw into is a floating piece of metal that's threaded that you can take out and get a replacement for, or make a replacement. Pretty simple. The deal is, after about 30 or 40 times, it's time to change those screws. Not to mention, it's a small table. You don't have very much of a work area, and I don't know, I just wasn't happy with it. Now, you remember my first work table, large and heavy, but the problem is that the way that this thing here sits so close to the edge of the table, I wouldn't be able to use that if I wanted to. Not to mention, weight was a factor. There we go. This is the Rust-Oleum black hammer finish paint that I painted 5 minutes ago, and it's already dry to the touch. I found these at my metal supply. They were all cut in 3-foot sections, so I got them out of the drops and got to save a little bit of money. But you can buy a 22-foot stick of this stuff. This is 1/2 inch, and it is very durable, and it's real easy to work with. The cutting's real easy, and a little tack weld or two will hold, is pretty much a weld all the way across it. And the stuff is just super lightweight and super durable. And because this was the deal I got on my drops at my steel supplier, that's what this was made out of. That and a piece of flat stock that I found leaning up against the wall over there. So the first thing I did not want to do is I didn't want to weld to this because this has got a real nice like powder coat finish. So what I did was I got me some real thin angle iron. I think this actually was some old bed frame stock that I'll use for almost nothing because that metal is so cheap. But for something like this, it's great. It's real thin. It's easy to drill through. I cut a couple of pieces that were about 1.5 inches, 2 inches long, so I could saddle them inside here. I drilled holes and put small screws and bolts here, or nuts and bolts here, to hold it in case you don't have a rivet gun. But I'm a big fan of rivets. I love rivets. So over here I put a couple of rivets just to hold it in place, and I drilled a hole all the way through and put me a nut and bolt in, and then tack weld it, and pulled it back out and welded it. Actually, I pulled this one back out and welded it up. This one here I had to weld completely in place because of the rivets, but they work real well. And these are just here to hold the table to my mount, and I wanted to make this piece here and that piece as one best I could. The first thing I did was I set this piece of metal up here, and I put a piece of cardboard up here and cut out this relief and held the piece of metal up here to kind of see about where my blade was going to be, because it's not like right in the center, it's kind of offset, right? Once I did that, I went ahead and made a partial cut, and once I made that partial cut, I set the piece of cardboard in place so I could trace it off and then clean that out and finish this relief for the blade. Now when you do this, you want to make sure that you've got like a little small square so you can make sure that your table is square with your blade. And you want to be level this way and this way as well. Not only square, but you also want to be level. That's why you got to start off with a level table. Now once this thing's in place, those little brackets that I was telling you, that's what those are for. And those were just a couple of pieces of scraps I found laying around in the bottom of a bucket. I made sure that both of my bolts were the same size so I can zip them on and off real quick, so it's not that big of a deal. I built a frame that was nice and square that fit the size of this, keeping in mind that it wasn't going to interfere with any part of the saw. I made sure that that was all welded up real nice and flat. I sanded all that down and then tack welded this top plate to that, and then once I did that, I started working on my little legs. Now I can take a pair of largemouth vice grips and I can grab that right there, and I can grab this right here, but it really isn't necessary. As far as, if you can see, it kind of stays pretty sturdy. If anything, I think I would build a little bracket that would come down here back in the back that I could run a single bolt through if I had a table where it was used for this saw. But I wanted to be able to make this thing where I can set it up on this table or that table or that table or even up over here. So the end product is this here, and as you can see, my cutting area is nice and big and juicy. I don't even remember what size it is, but we're looking at 1 foot by 16 inches. And excuse me moving everything around so quick, I think it's like a 1/8 inch. You could go thicker, it's just going to be heavier. Now I won't paint the top of this because any paint that you try to put up here is just going to get scratched up. You just got to keep a light machine oil or something on here to keep it from rusting, or just sand it off every once in a while. The bottom, I definitely need to do another cover too, but I hit with this hammer finish because good old hammer finish, you can always come back and touch it up when you need. There's always the color on the shelf, and it's just an amazing paint that sticks to almost everything, and it dries in just a minute or two. And that's the thing I really like about it. It dry to the touch in about 5 minutes, because I hate waiting on paint to dry. So with this setup here, it works really well. The Hercules actually has a little light up in there. It does put a shadow right on the front of the blade from where they've got it back here. See the lights back here in the back. And I don't guess there was really any much other place they could put it, but you do get a shadow right where you're trying to cut. So if you've got a little bitty line that's hard to see, that shadow can be a problem. One thing I'll mention is that your blade kind of sits at a crazy angle this way. And I built a lot of these little tabletops, and these lines here, no matter how hard you try to get it at that angle of the blade, it always seems to be a little bit off. And this thing here will throw you off as far as your visual when you're cutting, when you're trying to cut something square. You'll find that you follow this line here, and this line's not what you need to follow. So I think what I'm going to do is I am going to pull off here square and tape off 1.5 inches or so and paint that black. So I'll at least have a black line covering this line here. That way my eye will have something to follow. May not even paint it. It may just go down as using blue painter's tape, and just leave the painter's tape on there, because everything will slide over it real easy. But that's stuff I'm still kind of just spitballing. I hope that this answers a couple of questions for you, and I hope that it keeps you from buying something that you're expecting this thing to do that it won't. If you can overlook a couple of the shortcomings, it's really a good little tool. And if you can get it for less than $100 with a coupon on sale, it's, you know, in my opinion, it's worth it. But in a perfect shop, you'd have 2 of them. That way you could have one horizontal and one vertical all the time. I guess in a perfect world, you'd have 4 of them, you know. So I hope this helps, and got any questions, leave them below and we'll try to get them answered. And